Go back a few thousand years, and the energy available to grow our crops or feed animals was limited by the daily sunlight falling on the earth. But now, we gorge ourselves on hundreds of years' worth of sunlight every single year. Every part of modern life is now literally made of oil, from CDs and plastic bags, to medicine and computers, from clothes and carpets, to hair gel and cell phones. It's a fantastically useful substance. Then there's our food. Each calorie we eat uses about 80 oil calories to produce, package, refrigerate, and transport. And fossil fuel-produced fertilizers now feed about 2 billion people who could not otherwise stay alive. It would be wise for humanity to use the remaining oil to build a new society which could run without it. But we are instead indiscriminately burning tens of millions of barrels every day. It'll all be gone in about 40 years, leaving pretty much none for future generations.
All right, guys, push it back!
And then you see it, you smell it, and, you know, it's greasy and, you know, ugly and smells so much like money. It's just beautiful, you know.
Why are American cities designed so it's almost impossible not to have a car? Why were 100 railways in cities like New York, Philadelphia, and Los Angeles bought up and then deliberately destroyed? Why did the electric car get scrapped? Why were we, along with Australia, the only 2 countries not to sign the original Kyoto Climate Treaty? Why was an oil company lobbyist allowed to change official government reports on global warming? Why was the same PR firm employed by the tobacco industry to persuade the public that smoking is healthy, then employed by the oil industry to convince us there was still doubt about climate change? Alternative energy has been available for 50 years. Why have we barely used it? Why were solar panels taken off the White House? Because, right from the early days of the industry, the oil men and their obscene profits have had an unhealthy influence on the people running our country. And now, they are the people running our country. And they're providing the cash, too. The oil business isn't just in bed with the government, it is the government.
Search visible impacts of climate change leading up to 2010.
101 degrees Fahrenheit. It's the hottest day ever recorded.
700 people are now feared dead after the strongest ever recorded day's rainfall in India's history.
Now it's official, the past year has been the driest in Melbourne's history.
The desert is advancing at the phenomenal rate of 3 miles every year.
Dozens of Antarctic ice shelves collapsing faster than anyone predicted.
18 countries are underwater and 1.5 million people are affected.
I think one's got to be very careful about attaching a particular event to global warming. But nevertheless, the intensity of hurricanes is related to surface sea temperature. So increased intensity of hurricanes is associated with global warming.
It is our fault. After years of debate, some of the world's top scientists have concluded...
Unequivocal is the word they use. Human activity is
contributing to changes in our Earth's climate, and that issue is no longer up to debate.
In Andermatt, they've covered a glacier with a special protective sheet to reduce its summer melt.
One way I do my bit for the environment is turning to 30 with Ariel.
This is offsetting all those flights that I take, that I have to for my job.
David Cameron even wears recycled shoes made from old fireman's trousers.
Despite all of the efforts to control pollution and its effects on our climate, the level of greenhouse gas emissions has reached a record high and shows no signs of being reversed.
Despite the Kyoto Treaty and all the talk of reducing emissions of carbon dioxide, levels of this key greenhouse gas are rising faster than ever.
Climate scientists can estimate how much of the remaining fossil fuels we can safely burn. This amount is called the global cap. Under this proposal, the world's governments would make a binding international agreement detailing how to distribute the global cap. The earlier the start date, the greater the chance of not triggering runaway climate change. The total global emissions for the first year, say 2012, will be set at their current level. Every year following they'd shrink until, by about 2065, they're almost zero. Initially, each country would be allocated an emissions quota according to how much they currently consume. But this would change over time. America would slash its emissions 90% from its current over-consuming position. Europe too would decrease massively, as would China. But India and Africa would increase until, by about 2025, each human being on the planet would have equal rights to the Earth's resources. Equity is the only option morally, and also practically, as developing countries won't sign up to anything less. The total emissions would then keep decreasing every year, until by 2065 we'll have weaned ourselves off fossil fuels and prevented the worst impacts of climate change. As to how each country divvies up its share to its citizens, there are various options on the table, the most promising of which is individual carbon rationing.
And it is global warming. For the first time, scientists confirm the link between climate change and our awful weather.
Emergency services scrambled to Bedford's swollen. As the floodwaters finally worked their way along the Great Ouse, other parts of Bedfordshire didn't escape either.
We've lived up here for over 40 years, and we've never, ever had anything like this.
80,000 fatalities in Burma today after Cyclone Nergis.
Drought emergency across Western Europe, with drinking water strictly rationed in Holland, France.
Forest fires, which are still sweeping across Spain.
£30 billion, price worth paying for motorists' right to drive, said Lord Clarkson of Silver.
Good news for the UK wine industry, especially.
The latest is that New Orleans will not be rebuilt a third time. So the Louisiana
less than the total destruction of India's dams would end Pakistan's drinking water crisis.
As US President Chelsea Clinton refuses Africa's
sales of air conditioning units in India.
Thousands as San Francisco's extraordinary heat wave continues into Los Angeles.
Now we're seeing extreme weather events somewhere on the planet every single day. Estimating 35 million Chinese refugees.
Skiing in the Alps is over.
New Channel 4 documentary asks, is global warming really happening or are natural?
It's 61 degrees centigrade, the highest land temperature.
More than 100 million people are homeless tonight as Bangladesh...
methane emissions from Siberia.
The last Indonesian tree fell, but biofuel prices... The European Union today permanently closed all of its borders.
And roadside verges must be reserved for food production.
London is underwater again as last night's 30-foot storm surge overcame the Thames Barrier.
New Zealand has also now closed its borders, leaving 22 million Australians.
Reports coming in that the North Sea is boiling. 100 million refugees from Middle East and continental Europe are all heading north.
Species are now extinct, scientists estimate, and ecosystems are collapsing across the planet.
Past 2 degrees. We cannot now stop runaway climate change.
There are simply too many people to feed in Ireland's remaining farmland.
Suicide rates increasing 800%. The Amazon rainforest is still burning.
And anyone who cannot bear to eat their own cats and dogs.
Nearly entering the 8th world food crisis.
World temperatures today passing 4 degrees.
Launch retaliatory nuclear strike on the Delhi.
Across the entire continent.
Welcome to the Global Archive, a vast storage structure located 800 kilometers north of Norway. It contains the artwork from every national museum. There are pickled animals stacked up 2 by 2. Every film, every book, every scientific report, all stored on banks of servers. But the conditions we are experiencing now were actually caused by our behavior in the period leading up to 2015. In other words, we could have saved ourselves. We could have saved ourselves, but we didn't. It's amazing. What state of mind were we in to face extinction and simply shrug it off?